so I think we'll get going. Thanks for coming. We'll see how this presentation goes. I've never done this topic before, so we'll see. There's something about eyes. Isn't there something about eyes? You have a hard time finding an ugly pair of eyes. Yeah? Everybody's eyes are beautiful. To see somebody, right, and to be seen, there's something about that. All the biographers of Martin Luther say people remarked about his eyes. His eyes are important. Google on your phone Rasputin. Look at his eyes. Yeah, you can maybe tell something about a person about their eyes. Rasputin's he's a weird character. Do you know about him? I'll let you, when you get bored in 15 minutes, look that up. Yeah. There's something about the all-seeing eye of God, right? In a lot of older churches, you'll see like a triangle, the Trinity, and then the all-seeing eye of God. It was taken over by the Masons, so now it's on your $1 bill. We don't do that anymore. But there's something about eyes. There's something about the idea of seeing through the eyes out, but also maybe in a little bit. To see and be seen, right? Think about how we often greet each other, right? I don't know how many times I've been in a narthex and good to see you, and somebody says, good to be seen, right? And it's not a throwaway phrase, is it, right? It's good that I see you and you're here and I know you, and it's good to be known. It feels good to be known. I was at dinner with my sister-in-law and brother-in-law and my wife maybe a year ago, and she's a nurse, and she's now she's pretty high up in the Children's Hospital in Madison. And I was remarking, I'm like, I think nurses, man, they really do a lot. And I base that off of being in lots of hospital rooms. You know, and I always tell the patients, listen to the nurse. Sometimes they know more than the doctors. I'm sorry. Right? Because they're there, right? And they have to navigate the doctors and the nurses and the family and all this kind of stuff. It's one of the hardest jobs at WLC. Often our best students are nurses because if you're not a good student, you're not in the nursing program very long. Just think about how hard it is. And she said to me, I feel seen. I feel seen. Now that can be a bad phrase, right? I want to be seen. Me, look at me, look at me, look at me, right? And that gets abused by people who say, I don't feel seen, so that you need to then change your ways so that I have power, or I have clout, or I have a say. That phrase can be misunderstood, but there's something about somebody looking at you and knowing you. To be seen is a big deal. Psalm 42, as the deer pants for streams of water, so my soul pants for you, my God. My soul thirsts for God, for the living God. When can I go and meet with God? When can I be seen by him, and when can I see him? When will this mysterious veil be lifted off so that I can really see him and be seen by him? Right? This is powerful imagery, I think. We know this, right? A lover's gaze, right? A lover's gaze. And then we have this theme, this archetype in Scripture that talks about God looking at us and turning his face towards us and turning his face away from us. At the cross, my God, why have you forsaken me? That is I think a way of saying God turned away from me. He no longer is involved in my life. He doesn't seem to care anymore. Right? So you have a lover's gaze, you have God's gaze upon you. We also gaze into the future. Right? We gaze into the future, and we're always gazing into the future, right? We've talked about this before. You can't really be in the present. We tell ourselves all the time to be in the present, but you can't, because by the time you command yourself to be in the present, You're already in the future. Yeah? And we live by hope this side of heaven in a very profound way. In a way that when we get into heaven, we'll talk about this later, when we get into heaven, you're not going to have hope. Because hope says there's something better, but in heaven you already have the better. And you've never thought that way and never will be able to think that way this side of heaven. And that means you can never fully be in the present. You can never fully be perfected. You can never fully be fulfilled. Right? And so it's not just, what do I have to do tomorrow? Gazing into the future. But it's always like this season of life, right? So, every stage I look back at when I was a young parent and I go, those were the good old days. No, they weren't. No, they weren't. I remember going, ugh, once they get out of diapers, once they can wipe their own rear end, once they get out of the car seat, once they can drive. Now it's once they get married and get off my payroll, right? It's always just this. And then some of you look old enough to give me some wisdom about what you hope for now, right? I'm still looking forward to those golden years. And you're going to tell me, they ain't always so golden, are they, right? I'm always looking in the past or looking into the future. It's just our lot in life, right? And so we're always gazing and being gazed upon, right? And the Lord said to Moses, tell Aaron, the priest, and his sons, this is how you are to bless the Israelites. Say to them, the Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. The Lord turn his face toward you and give you peace. So they will put my name on the Israelites and I will bless them. I really like that phrase, that put my name on the Israelites. That's a topic for a different time. I think there's a connection to baptism there, right? God tattooed his name on me. I belong to him, right? He puts my name on me. But maybe I should concentrate a little bit more on have the Lord make his face shine on you, right? And so there's this gaze, right? He looks at you like a lover would. That's an underappreciated theme in the Old Testament and the New Testament, that God is your lover. Right? There's a whole book on it, Song of Songs, right? That God loves you, and that the marital love that is supposed to be the icon of God's love for us is not, well, these people are getting married, and so I'll use this marriage thing as an analogy to explain my deep love for them. No, the marital love came first, and we were created to be in marital love. I don't think we appreciate that enough. The lover's gaze, to look upon somebody. Yeah. But a gaze can also be law. You can think a mother's gaze can be loving or not so loving. Yeah. You can, the look of a father or the look of a mother at the right time can be like daggers into your heart. Yeah. Do you remember Peter when he hits rock bottom on Maundy, Thursday? And after promising God that he would never disown him, this is why you don't make promises to God. He makes promises to you. Your promises stink. Keep them to yourself. Yeah. He makes promises to God that he'll never disown him. And then he breaks that promise a few hours later. He can't muster up the courage to even admit knowing the man, Jesus, let alone being his follower. And then we're told that Jesus is led through, he's on trial in the high priest's courtyard, right? And Peter's out there warming his hands. And then Jesus looked at him. Oh, Jesus bound, right? And Peter has denied him. And Peter looks up and there's Jesus being led away. Oh, what a look that was. Was it law or gospel? At that moment for Peter, it was law, right? Because he runs away and cries, right? But it wasn't a turning away from him. right? And so a mother's gaze that is law comes from love still, right? Don't do that. Disappointed in you, right? And so we do have, I think, the all-seeing eye of God who looks at us, yeah? And that's law. I mean, this is a terrifying thing to think about, that God sees all. Yeah, all. Yeah, all, right? And yet he has decided to shine on us, right? I preached a sermon this morning, and it was about the Nunc Dimittis, Simeon. Remember Simeon? Simeon holds the baby Christ and says, "Now let your servant depart in peace, for I've seen salvation, glory of Israel, the light to the Gentiles." And I was trying to make the point that we always think of Simeon as being old, but we're not told how old he is. And I can't get out of my head, I should have put this up, Rembrandt's rendering of that moment. And Rembrandt was known, this artist was known for his use of light. And the picture has Simeon holding Jesus, and the light seems to come from Jesus and reflect onto Simeon, whose rest of his figure fades away into the dark background. Right? That God's light, yeah, shines on you. His face shines on you. But of course, we have a bit of a problem. Here's the passage, just to remember. Yeah. The Lord turned and looked straight at Peter. Then Peter remembered the word the Lord had spoken to him: "Before the rooster crows today, you will disown me 3 times." And he went outside and wept bitterly. But we have a problem here. Back to the point. We have a problem here. And that is, does God have a face? We're talking about him, his eyes seeing us, and his gaze and face, and us seeing him. But he doesn't have a face because God is spirit. So why all this talk about seeing God and being seen by God, being honored by him, looking at his dear people with a lover's gaze, with a mother's gaze? This is a little bit of the conundrum of this. And so what do you mean? Well, how do you get light? How do you get light when it's the light of God? Well, it's the word of God that is light. Let it be a light for my path. How do you see God? How do you have the face turned on you? It's always through words, right? And so the seeing God and being seen by God is a bit of a metaphor, right? It's a bit of a metaphor. And so we have to then think about how does that happen in my life? Well, God did have a face, didn't he? There it is, right? He did have a face by taking on flesh. And so we have this whole theme of masks. The incarnation, right? God puts on the mask of the face, right? The fleshy thing of Jesus Christ, born in Bethlehem, brought up in Nazareth. So for 33 years, you could look God directly in the face. But it was still a mask, right? It wasn't the full glory of God. Remember, Moses goes up to Sinai, and in that section in Exodus, we hear about Moses seeing God and seeing him, I think even his face, and yet we're also told that he had to be hid in the cleft of the rock, and only God's backside passed by. And so we have, what's the deal? How does this work? Well, I think the best way to think about it is to say this, that God must like hide his glory, so to speak, so that you don't get blown away, right? So I like to use this analogy that Indiana Jones and the Ark of the Covenant is probably pretty accurate, right? The Ark of the Covenant opens up and your face melts off. You know, there's probably good theology there, right? You can't go into the presence of God and live as a mere mortal, let alone a sinful mortal, right? No one has seen the Father except the one who is from God. Only he has seen the Father, says Jesus. But then Jesus will also say, if you know me, you know the Father, because we are one. And so in this hidden way, God hides, then I can paradoxically actually see him. Right? So I can see him, I can see face to face, quite literally, with the person Jesus Christ. So then if this is a metaphor, and I think it's partially a metaphor and partially not, we'll get to that a little bit later. But what does it mean to see God then? Well, I think it is to enjoy him and to know him and to contemplate him. And we could probably add some other verbs there as well. Right? To be seen and to see, as we said before, is to know somebody and to connect with them and to contemplate them and hopefully to enjoy them. Right? I sit face to face at a meal with friends, and I look at their face and their eyes, and I know them, and I enjoy them, and I think about them. This is love, to think about other people. And it is to be loved, to enjoy this, to break bread with that. Right? To see my wife and to make sure that she's seen. And the way I do that is every day I go, what can I do for you? She says no every time, so it's okay if I know I don't have to do anything. Huh? She's seen by me. Then she knows that I enjoy her and I contemplate her. I'm in the habit of now, she's, during the week, often she has to get up earlier than I do because I still got to take the runt of the litter to school, right? Yeah, so. Otherwise, I'd get up at the same time. And so I hear her get up, and it's dark out, and my eyes are closed. I say, you look beautiful today. She said, you can't see me. I said, I just know. You writing this down, guys? I am, yeah, all right. But it's my way of saying I see you, and I enjoy you, and I contemplate you, and I think about you. Right? So to enjoy God, and there's something about, we don't talk about joy enough. I got a bunch of books because I can't control myself. Books are my shoes. My wife and my daughters, you could have a different pair of shoes every single day of the year. I don't understand, right? I just want black and I want brown and why all these shoes, right? And she'll say, why all these books that you don't read? Well, okay, I got a problem too. And one day I started to look at them and I go, do I have any books on joy? I have one. It's that small. That's a problem. That's a problem. We don't talk about joy enough. And there's something about like enjoying theology, enjoying the thinking and contemplating about what God is doing there, the depths of love, right? I was speaking this morning with seminary students, and I was talking about 1 Corinthians 13, the great love chapter. And I said, it's a cool chapter. You like that? Yeah. I'm like, wait, talk to me in 10 years when you have done 20 weddings on that. You won't like it anymore. And I went a time where I'm like, I don't even want to look at 1 Corinthians 13. Because everybody wanted that for their wedding. And I was sick of preaching on it, right? Shame on me. But since I've been out of the parish, not doing weddings anymore, I've circled back on that. And there's some gems in there. And I don't know that, it's like, oh, it's made my faith strong or whatever. It's just a joy to think about it. It's just a joy to contemplate it. In your devotional life, I hope you find that joy once in a while. It's like learning just for the sake of learning, right? Not trying to read the whole Bible through a year, which is a good practice, but it's not trying to pass a test. It's not trying to, here's my now 10 points to be a good Christian. Just sit back and enjoy it, to contemplate it, to see him. Sometimes you have to step back and see the whole picture and see him, right? I bet you that's true in all of your relationships, right? Especially parents and children. Man, what's tomorrow? Do you have your lunch done? Did you do your homework? And all of a sudden they're 18. And then I would imagine that you'll have these moments later. I'm not there quite yet. I'm still irritated by them. So, but when they come home, I bet you enjoy them in a way you never did when they were 12, 15, 18. You enjoy them, right? You enjoy them. right? It's a relationship changes a little bit because you have maybe a little bit of distance and you start to think about it. You get out of just the day-to-day boom, boom, boom. I hope your devotional life and your theology and coming to church has those moments. It's not just about learning, but also contemplating and enjoying Him. And 1 Corinthians 13, I got a passage from there later. Like, this thing rattled around in my head the last 3-4 years. I've mentioned this before, that I'm looking dimly into a mirror right now. But then I will know as I am fully known. And I will know as I'm fully known. And I found great joy just thinking about that passage. Yeah, that passage that was hidden in 1 Corinthians 13 that I didn't want to read. Yeah, we'll come back to that a little bit. Here's something to think about too. Though you have not seen Him, you love Him. And even though you do not see Him now, you believe in Him and are filled with an inexpressible and glorious joy, for you are receiving the end result of your faith, the salvation of your souls. So it's connected to salvation, of course. Without salvation, none of this really is going to be in its proper place. It's never really going to be enjoyable. But this is a cool passage, isn't it? One that I probably never thought about it until I was preparing for this. Shame on me, right? But then great joy comes to me because I found something new in the Scripture, which you do every day, right? You are filled with inexpressible and glorious joy, yeah? And even though you don't see Him, you know Him. You know Him. And it's not a feeling, right? It's not a feeling. That's a different kind of love, right? This is not, the lover's gaze is not the gaze of two teenagers. That's something different. The lover's gaze is that 75-year-old man and woman. And he sees her and her beauty in a way that nobody else ever did and ever will except for God, right? That's an inexpressible joy. And so I'm going to stop talking about it because it's inexpressible. But you know what I mean, right? You know what I mean, yeah. By the way, total side note here. You ever have that moment where you hear a piece of music and you go, that's exactly what I feel, and I couldn't articulate it, but somehow the music did? Yeah. The arts do that for you, right? The arts do that for you, and we should be more about arts and music. We're really good at music here at St. John's. It's a great joy and a great gift, isn't it? Right? Even though you cannot. Even though you don't see it, you can't put your finger on it, you can't even speak it because it's too great to even articulate. Sometimes the music says, that's what I meant, right? And I'm old enough to know that when I hear this song from 1989 or from 1996, it transports me back there, right? Even if I don't even know the words, right? It just transports me. Yeah, inexpressible joy. All right, from Peter 2. Through these he has given us his very great and precious promises, so that through them you may participate in the divine nature, having escaped the corruption in the world caused by evil desires. The phrase I want to talk about here is participate in the divine nature. So a lot of people who talk about seeing God, and the beatific vision is the technical phrase of this vision of beauty, right? Of blessing, really, right? Of being seen by God, and specifically like heaven, right? And a lot of them will point to, it's like you become deified, you become godlike. Now we got to be careful here. We don't mean that you become God. That's not what we mean, right? What we mean here, though, is that you become like God. You have a resurrected body like Christ's glorious body. You will know as you're fully known. You'll be righteous. You will rule like God does. You are going to do these divine things, right? And we don't like that. I know I skip over that part. Like if that came up, I don't think that's in the lectionary, but if it came up in the lectionary, I'd preach on something else. I don't want to get up there and say, and you will be gods someday. Yeah. But the idea here there is that you are becoming one with him like a lover. One flesh, in a profound analogy there, right? And you're starting to think, and you're starting to have his wisdom to think like him and to know like him, right? And how will that will be in heaven? Well, I think we'll get to that in a little bit. The answer is I'm not quite sure, but the example of hope is one example, right? We're always caught in the present. And God sees all of time. He doesn't fall apart in the present like we do. Well, in heaven we'll be like God and we won't fall apart in the present. I had this encounter with a cousin of mine who had spent some time in China. Just kind of an offhanded remark. This is kind of beside the point, but he said, the Chinese talk a little bit different about Taiwan than we do. They say stuff like this. Taiwan, right, we know the political problems there, yeah. Taiwan wants to be independent, is by all accounts independent. China would like it to be a part of China, the one China policy. And the Chinese people will say stuff like this. Taiwan was Chinese, is Chinese, and will always be Chinese. From the American perspective, we're like, no, it's not China right now, and we'd rather it not be China, but we're not going to say it out loud so that we don't get in trouble. But we're stuck in the present. They're playing the long game. And I said, that's the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And then I thought about it. If one of my daughters said, I hate you, and I'm leaving the family, she was my daughter, is my daughter, and will always be my daughter. Even if at the present moment, we're not good at a good place. Yeah? That's the perspective of God that's almost impossible for us to wrap our heads around. Okay? Because we're stuck in the moment and we have to be. Right? Maybe a little sympathy for the people who have their heads in the clouds some days. Maybe they get it more than we do. My oldest daughter is the smartest person in our family. Uber talented. You know, she'd be a great musician if she would just stick to one instrument and actually practice. Ferocious reader, just was reading like right away and just gobbled up books. Can't plan a Tuesday afternoon to save her life. Drives me nuts. Her head's in the clouds. Maybe she's closer to God than I am. Yeah? I don't know. All right. Let's go down a rabbit hole. I'm moving quicker than I thought. I'll bring it back. I'll come back, I promise, eventually. All these people are talking about identity these days, right? I get to identify myself, and you're not allowed to identify me. I'm going to tell you the pronouns that I would use. I'm going to tell you all that kind of stuff. Take out the politics and even the religion for a second. Let's just do some philosophy. I don't know that it's impossible to identify myself. I can, in a way. Let me just have this thought experiment. And I'm thinking about that phrase, to be known as you're fully known, to see God and to be seen. Who knows me the best? Well, when I was a child, it was my mother. Right? You've had that experience where you're like, kid, I know, you think you know you, and I know exactly what you're going to do. Right now, it's my wife. There are some things that I know about myself that she doesn't know about, but if we would take a test, if God would give us a test on who is Mike Berg, she would get an A, I would get a C minus. Right? Let's just think about it. I can't see myself. I can't see my back. I can't see the vast majority of myself is inside of myself. Only my doctor can do that. I can see my hands and my arm. I can see the tip of my nose. I used to be able to see my feet. can't if I get it. I'm gonna lean over. I can't see my feet. Am I wearing shoes? I can't see them. Yeah. It's a problem. Anyway. Well, I can look at myself in the mirror, but that's a reflection. I'm looking dimly into a mirror is what Paul says before he says, and you will know as you're fully known. Oh, I can take a picture of myself with my cell phone, but what do you do with all those pictures? You delete all the ones you don't like. It's not, which one's the real you? The one you like or the one that you deleted? My wife's always looking at me, so she knows me. God's always looking at me, so she knows me. Let's do the identity thing. This will be a little boring, but I think it's helpful. I can't identify myself in a way. I need to have other information. I can't fully know myself because I don't have the perspective. I can only look dimly into a mirror. But I do know some stuff about me, right? I really do, right? And the medical professions are right. Like, you know your body better than everybody else, right? It's part of the information. But so is the doctor's information, right? You put it together. In order to identify myself, though, I kind of have to draw a line around myself. I have to be able to say, this is where I end, and this is where the pulpit starts. Because if I don't do that, then I'm not sure if this pulpit is a part of me or not. So I have to draw lines. In order to identify myself in the best way I can, I have to identify the pulpit and the shoes and the chair and you. I have to be able to identify you in order to identify me. I have to say, you're different than me. You're a different thing than me, right? It sounds pretty obvious, right? But think about how our world talks right now when I'm not allowed to identify you. I can't identify you. I don't have the right to do that. I think it's a philosophical impossibility to say I can't identify you and I can only identify myself for those two reasons. Right? Now, why is this important? I think this is important because we got an independent streak in the modern West. And a lot of it is good, right? You're responsible for yourself. Quit blaming other people. You're not lost into a collective. You're valuable in and of yourself, not because you're a part of this family or this country or whatever. That independence and that individuality is good, but it can go too far. It can go too far to the point where then we start saying, I come up with my own truth, my own morality, and my own identity. And I would say this is a philosophical impossibility, because you don't have the perspective, you don't have the vision, and I have to identify the people around me in order to distinguish myself from other people. I bring this up because I think our young people are carrying this burden. They're carrying this burden of having to identify themselves and come up with their own truth and their own morality. Those are things only a divine being can do. Those are things only a divine being can do. Forget Christianity for a second. Forget religion for a second. The only statement I'm making is those things only a divine being can do by definition. Because it has to be all-knowing and all-seeing and all this kind of stuff. So before you get really angry at this young generation for doing all these crazy things and having these crazy ideas and whatever, maybe a little sympathy that we've placed a divine-sized burden on their shoulders in our culture. Right? No wonder they're falling apart. No wonder they're falling apart. Just think of that teenage girl in a dark moment in the middle of the night who's been told over and over and over again, find your own value, find your own story, find your own identity. Her brain's not even halfway to fully developed. She has very little experience in this world. She has very little knowledge. It's a heavy burden. It's a real heavy burden we've put on them. And it comes out often by saying, I'm not seen, I'm not seen. Well, you are seen, little girl, and you are known, and you are identified by God, right? Without that, I think you start to lose control, because you only have two options then. Your option is society decides my value and my truth and my morality and my identity. This is a poor answer, right? And we're good about telling them, don't let society dictate your value. You don't need the Jordans and the iPhone. I mean, we say it, we don't live by it, but we say it. What we don't say, as we've said multiple times here, what we don't say is you don't have the ability to give yourself value either. Because you can be just as wrong as this world, right? And that's wrapped up in being seen by God, being known by God, being loved by God, having his face turn on you, right? Without that, you're left to your own thinking. And that's often a very bad place, right? Okay. So here's the passage from my least favorite and now favorite part of Scripture. When I was a child, I talked like a child, I thought like a child, I reasoned like a child. So far, so good. When I became a man, I put the ways of childhood behind me. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. I could spend the rest of my lifetime with that phrase, and I don't think I'd ever fully understand it, right? It's some good stuff, and it brings me great joy to work through that. All right, from 1 John. See what great love the Father has lavished on us, that we should be called children of God, and that is what we are. That is what we are. He identified us. The reason the world does not know us, right? The world cannot give you value. The reason the world does not know us is that it did not know him. Without God, it's just your opinion. Dear friends, now we are children of God, and what we will be has not yet been made known. I'm not fully known yet. But we know that when Christ appears, we shall be like him, for we shall see him as he is. All who have this hope in him purify themselves just as he is pure. So that's a good wrapping up of that, right? I become godlike, I become known, I start to think like him, right? And I will see him face to face. So what does it mean to see God face to face? Well, I think in heaven I'll see Jesus' face. Father is spirit, so I don't know that he's going to have a physical face. But that's okay, right? Because I'll know him and be fully known and think like him. So some of the things in heaven then that are things we contemplate down here on earth, it's helpful to think about that, like what we did with hope. We've done a couple of these in Veritas before, but I think it's helpful, and I think it helps us grow a little bit, even if you're hearing it for the second time. Let's just go through them real quick and I'll do my bit on each. Justice is a word thrown about both in the Bible and in our culture right now. Justice is an elusive thing. The word justice and the word righteousness in many languages are actually the same word. Okay? Now, righteousness is a big fancy word, but all it means is to be right. To be right with God. Not wrong with him, right with him. Right? How are you going to be right with God? How are you going to go into his presence? Not with what you got. So he has to make you worthy. He makes you righteous. He makes you like him, and that is a gift. So justice and righteousness for the Christian are all wrapped up into one. So how does this get played out when I hear these words? Work for justice, work for justice. Yes, we should work for justice and fairness, right? But it's always elusive this side of heaven. So my little bit goes like this. This is going to get dark and weird for a little bit, but it's okay. All right, okay. If I steal your car and I crash your car, what do I owe you? A new car. Yeah? That's repayment, recompense, reparation. There's about a dozen RE words. I try to make it right. What if I like doing this with the students. What if I steal your car and your grandma's in the front seat and I crash your car and your grandma dies? What do I owe you? A new car and a new grandma, I guess. Even if I could resurrect grandma or put a price on her like the insurance company will, I can't undo the psychological damage of killing your grandma. I can't undo the psychological damage of stealing your car. I can't even undo the psychological damage of stealing a pack of gum from you because you've been violated even in a small way. I can't undo that. The best I can do is repayment, recompense, all these RE words. And so at best, justice on earth is that reparation, repayment, recompense, that kind of stuff. At worst, it's vengeance, eye for an eye kind of thing. But there's another RE word there, and that's reconciliation. And there is, at times in our legal system, times for reconciliation. I've told you this story before. It's a made-up story. But there's a woman who loses her adult son, let's say he's 20 years old, to gang violence. And they caught the guy who shot her son to death. And during the courtroom scene, she does not want vengeance. In fact, when she looks at the perpetrator, who does she see? Her son. And she doesn't want another life lost. She knows the state has to do what the state does and punish him. But she does not want blood. In fact, she just wants to go up and hug this young man. That's heaven. You forgot about repayment. You forgot about vengeance. You wanted to wipe it clean. True justice, true righteousness is when it's put away. It's almost impossible for us to wrap our heads around this. Remember what I told you. What did Paul and Stephen say when they met in heaven? Remember Paul was a part of stoning Stephen to death. Stephen's like, bro, you stoned me. I don't know how that conversation went. But I do know that there was justice, righteousness wrapped up in the only way it can be, in forgiveness and love. And I know this because I'm married. Because the person I've harmed the most is my wife, and the person who has harmed me the most is my wife. Like if I walk out of here and you guys are like, boo, that stinks, I'll be annoyed and sad for 36 hours. But I'll get over it. My wife does that one stings a little bit, right? So she is just by definition going to hurt me more than anybody else. And I can't quite explain it. But somehow we're stronger for it, having sinned against each other and forgiven each other and love overcome. Like I'm willing to bet that our relationship is stronger and our love is deeper, even if we had never fought. Just sat in our two chairs watching TV, no passion, you know. I used to say that in marriage counseling, like, hey, I don't want to make light of this, but there's a lot of couples that would love just a little juice of what you got right now, even though you're fighting. At least there's some passion there. Yeah. So I think I'll remember my sins and the sins committed against me in heaven, and somehow through the cross, they will be made glorious. And I can't explain it, except when I think about my dear wife. Yeah? That's what I mean. Then I will know and fully know, and I'll think like God because I've seen him and been seen by him. Peace is another one, right? Not a cessation of armed conflict, but a true shalom, a true peace, a true everything's the way it's supposed to be. That's what shalom finally means, the Hebrew word, the way it's supposed to be. Wholesome, right? When you can enjoy things, right? Freedom's an interesting one too. We have a particular idea of freedom in America. God has a different kind of freedom, a different kind of idea. Right? Use this analogy we've used many times before. You're addicted to sin. I know you are, because otherwise, if you weren't, you would have stopped a long time ago. And so you're an addict to sin, and so if you consider freedom to do what you want, however you want, with whomever you want, as often as you want, you're like the heroin addict saying, it's my body, my choice. No, it's not. You're addicted to this. So what's the opposite of sinful nature? And by the way, it's the worst kind of prison, the addict, because he convinces himself it's freedom. Yeah, that's a whole topic. People have written books on that. When you call prison freedom. So, if the opposite of my addiction to sin is righteous love, then my freedom is righteous love, and that hits us the wrong way, doesn't it? Because love assumes submission and doing something, dying to yourself and living for somebody else. So how could that be freedom when I'm a prisoner? St. Paul talks about this, being a slave to righteousness. How could this be? Well, this is one of those profound things where freedom looks a lot like love in the eyes of God. And you have moments, they're very rare, but you have moments like this. So the bit goes like this. Let's say you help a little old lady across the street. Good for you. Why'd you do that? Well, maybe it was the right thing to do. Maybe if I don't do it, I'll feel bad. If I do it, I'll feel good. I don't want to be embarrassed by not doing it. All of those are really bad reasons to do it. Right? Those are all real bad reasons to do it. Yeah? Now, it doesn't matter if the little old lady gets across the street. She doesn't care about your motive. She made it safe across the street. But the motive matters, right? We're never quite at that moment where we just do it because that's who we are. They're rare, but have you had that moment when you just did the dishes because it's what you did? You didn't want to get credit for it. You didn't say it's the right thing to do. You didn't do it begrudgingly. You just did it. You just did it. Why? Because that's who you are. That's freedom from the law. Not because it was the right thing to do. You don't care about the right thing to do. You just did it. That's heaven. That's heaven. And those moments are rare down here, but you can kind of sort of contemplate it. Truth, not as an opinion, but this thing that orders all things and gives you great joy to know stuff, right? We pit truth versus falsity, and rightfully so, and we fight for truth, and we try to find the truth, all these kinds of things. But then there's this moment, like we already talked about, to be in a place that's so truthful and honest that it's comforting, right? It's so truthful and honest that you can literally be yourself and be comfortable. I hope home is like that for you. Yeah? Heaven is that home for you. We've already talked about hope and then, of course, love. Not a friendship kind of love, not a duty kind of love, not an infatuation kind of love, but an agape love, where you give your whole self to the person, and that person gives them whole self to you. That's love, right? To give your whole self, right? And it's a vulnerable thing, but it's to be fully known and to be fully seen. Like all of these things sort of kind of wrap together, don't they? All right. So we're practical people. What are you supposed to do then, until we get to that heaven, right? Think about the presence of God. We don't think about that enough in our modern world. Think about the presence of God, that you come in here and it's his body and blood and it is his word and he's the true baptizer and the true absolver, and that you come in and it's not a fearful thing. It's a good fearful thing, I should say, because this almighty God who sees all and knows all is also your loving Father. And so all the attributes of God because of grace become for you rather than something that you should run away in terror from, right? So think about the presence of God in your day-to-day life and specifically in the means of grace, and to enjoy him and to contemplate him as he speaks to you. That's how you know him and how you have light. Think about perspective, right? Many different avenues in our life, we get stuck in the present and we're myopic, right? We think about this one thing. We do that with pain, right? I had a professor who called it the stub toe problem. So you get up in the middle of the night to get a glass of water and you stub your toe, and that pain that goes from your toe all the way up to your, like the house could be on fire and all you care about is that toe, right? Yeah, that's the pain of your world right now. And how many times did you say to your children, this too shall pass, right? And if you zoom out to God's perspective, you got a lot of stubbed toes, and they are painful. But in the wash of God's great love and eternal love, they are put in their proper place, the proper perspective, right? So always think about perspective. What would God's perspective be on this from his viewpoint from heaven? I think you'll find great comfort there. And true meditation. Meditation's making a huge comeback in the atheist world of all places, because they know that even though they deny the soul, they know that there's something, right? And maybe they can explain it away by neurology, but they understand that there's health benefits from meditation. Now, what they mean is, being mindful, breathing exercises, taking time, and all of those are good, I've been told. I've never tried. I had to try it once in grad school. They made us do it. We had to walk around and whatever. I just got on my phone. Shame on me. Yeah. But Luther talks a lot about meditating on God, like an object. Not in a veneration way, but an object. You know the great hymn, Sacred Head Now Wounded? It's from an ancient poem that talks about sacred heart, sacred head, sacred hands, all this stuff. And that was put to music by Paul Gerhardt, who in one of his churches in the altar, there was the head of Christ with the crown of thorns. To contemplate and stop and think about that. To take one familiar Bible passage like 1 Corinthians 13, that chapter, and just sit on it. Just sit on it and think about it. Sometimes one passage a day is worth more than 2 chapters a day. Mary treasured up these things and pondered them in her heart. We should learn more about Mary. He has made everything beautiful in its time. He has also set eternity on the human heart, yet no one can fathom what God has done from beginning to end. He's put eternity, you are made for eternity, you're thinking for eternity. Even those who are not religious are thinking about eternity, and I'm going to end with this passage, because here comes Pastor Bortle and I'm over time. Therefore, since we have such a hope, we are very bold. We are not like Moses, who put a veil over his face to prevent the Israelites from seeing the end of what was passing away. Coming down from Sinai, the glory of God was reflecting off of him. But their minds were made dull, for to this day the same veil remains when the old covenant is read. They don't see grace. It has not been removed, because only in Christ is it is taken away. You see love now. Yeah? Even to this day when Moses is read, a veil covers their hearts. But whenever anyone turns to the Lord, the veil is taken away. You see him and he sees you. Now the Lord is a spirit, and where the Spirit of the Lord is, there is freedom. He is saying to Corinthians who lived under a Roman oppression. And we all, who with unveiled faces contemplate the Lord's glory, are being transformed into his image with ever-increasing glory, which comes from the Lord, who is the Spirit. You don't know it, but God is forming you for heaven and giving you wisdom along the way, figuring out faith, hope, and love. And then it will be completed in heaven when you see him face to face. Yeah? All right, how'd I do? Was that okay? Was that okay for the first time? All right, thank you for your time.